Hello everyone, welcome back for another video. Today, I'm going to be talking about getting into Steel Path. If you're struggling with surviving, like what frames can help you, and like how they help you survive and all that. Without your arcanes, archon shards, you're not gonna have that right off the bat. And I know a lot of YouTubers and stuff are like, well, if you run this arcane, it'll be super easy. Or it's like you put archon shards on them and you most broken frame in the game, but it's like when you're first starting off Steel Path, you don't have all that stuff. So, I'm going to be showing you some ways to get through Steel Path a little bit with just survivability. Talk about weapons in another one. First off, good old Loki. Simple reason for survival: invis. Loki and Ash are probably the best for this, but like when you're in a mission, right, and you got like 3 other people with you, say survivals or defenses, super easy to get groups. All you need to do is survive. Just don't be going down. Don't be having to get rezzed all the time. You know, that's the big thing. So Loki and Ash, these two, they will help you get through the mission. They don't do the greatest damage. Like Ash can be built up again, but the main thing is the invisibility. That's one of the easier ways. There are other ways to get invisibility, like through the Sentinel or like uh, the Dread augment that makes you go invis when getting headshots. But for now, we're talking about Warframes. And if you're wondering, both these builds for my Loki and Ash are pretty simple. It's just duration based. So just do what you can for duration, or uh, you can even go strength with your extra stuff. Alright, so the main thing you'll want, right, even if you got the invis, it's a good idea to go with the redirection mod and fast deflection. You can even throw on Vigilant Vigor uh, to increase this even more. It's called shield tanking, and basically your whole idea is to have your shields up and shield gate. So say they like one-shot your shields, you get some shield gating. With Vigilant Vigor and Fast Deflection, it'll be easier to get your shields all the way back up to max, so then when they knock it back down again, you got uh, more time being invulnerable for your shields to get back up. I do have an Augur mod on them because, say I'm in trouble, I'm getting hurt, pop my invis, decoy, or nourish. Just, if I'm not already invis, you want to stay invis, of course. But pop that real quick, and then it's like, boom, shields are back up. You're regenerating. Nourish, same thing. Keep it up at all times. But now, let's talk the basic, easiest way for survivability: Revenant. You and your whole team getting Mesmer skin. Of course, you'll need the Mesmer shield for that. But basically, you and your entire team immune to damage. Don't take any damage whatsoever. This is another frame I recommend. Super easy. You won't go down. You'll help your teammates out, help them survive easier. Basically, build for duration and strength again. Range doesn't really matter. You don't want to go too low on it though, because of getting the Roar and Mesmer skin buffs to your allies, not to mention your Thrall pack, so you have your little guy running around. Don't have to be right in his face. Now, next up, probably the easiest frame to get in the game, Rhino. Rhino or Rhino Prime, doesn't matter. But his whole thing, he's got Iron Skin. So, with Rhino in particular, you will have Overguard, and when that breaks, you've got your little time of invulnerability before it goes to your shields, and you also shield gate. But when you pop Iron Skin, you have a moment before you get Overguard that you are invulnerable, and like you won't take damage, and the more damage you would take, the more Overguard you get. So he's a super easy frame to play. You know, help out your teammates with, you got Iron Skin, Roar, and then I put Nourish on. You know, damage buff, and then you keep yourself alive. Remember, the main thing for Steel Path is keeping yourself alive. Between you and your teammates, you can deal damage, no problem. You don't need a Warframe to deal damage. It does help, but you can always rely on your weapons if you need to. Survivability is key. Alright, so here's another one. Dante. He's a little bit harder to grind for, and you might have trouble getting him. You might need help surviving in his mirror defense. But if you do get him, he is another great Warframe that'll help you and your allies with survivability. If you don't know, his 2, the Light Verse, gives Overguard. Simple, right? But you pop 2 of them in a row, then pop your final verse. That's where the real survivability comes in. Because then you make it so, 2 Light Verses, cast a succession, invigorate allies with a buff that increases health and grants Overguard. Kills and assists briefly regenerate Overguard. So as long as you're getting kills, boom, Overguard for you and your allies. Simple. In the same vein, Styanax. Styanax is in the same vein, although he also has a rally point. So he makes it so you and your allies get shields. For every kill, assist they contribute, they get shield regen. It's not just a little bit either. It's good shield. Like, look at that, 140 shield per kill. Followed by Final Stand, which is an ability strong enough to kill enemies in Steel Path by itself. But it gives you and your allies in the area Overguard. The main thing with these, like Styanax, Dante, even say Kalervo and Rhino, just keeping Overguard continuously spawning. You could do the same thing for shield gating. But yeah, if you're struggling to survive in Steel Path, there's always a way. Like, if you mod for shield tanking or catalyzing shields, there's always a way to survive. It's super easy. But okay, let's say you don't want to play one of these defensive tanks. Say you want to play a high damage frame, like Geyer, for example, right? There's always a way to make any frame in the game go to Steel Path and survive no problem. I already mentioned shield gating, right? Like for my Geyer, I've got primary direction, fast deflection, and vigilant vigor, right? So my Geyer's shield tanking. But in the same vein, I'll run Nucor. And I know you're like, oh, why not run Kuvanukor? Because, I've got Kuvanukor. It's one of my most used weapons. But this Snukor is not built for extreme damage, because Gaia is going to be delivering that damage in succession. Main thing is secondary fortifier, which is gain 1 overguard for every 100 damage dealt to an enemy's overguard. Deal times 6 extra damage to overguard. I'm going to be honest, Steel Path has a lot of Xmas units that have overguard. And with Nuke chaining, right? Chaining from enemy to enemy, and then Gyre chaining, because I don't particularly know how much of it's affecting, but you keep up Gyres 2 or 3 and 4, Rotoswell and Gathode Grace. You're chaining. Basically, you shoot an enemy, Nuker's already chaining, and then Rotoswell's chaining, so that you're getting even more overguard. Granted, it does cap out at 15,000. Endgame, high levels doesn't really matter too much, because they'll one-shot through that. It's just getting your overguard up constantly, recharging it, so that you don't get hit. In the same vein, right? Say you go with Neza, right? Neza's another good frame where it has its own particular sort of surviving, right? You can shield gate, shield tank, overguard gate, whatever. But you've also got warding halo, which is its own specific thing, right? It works very similar to Rhino's Iron Skin, where you pop the ability, you get that moment of invulnerability, then the more damage you would have taken, or that it absorbs, the more damage it'll prevent, right? So it's not really shield tanking or anything like that. Like, it's its own specific thing, but you still do want to mod for shield tanking or shield gating, because this is projectiles only. Any gas clouds, melee attacks aren't going to be stopped by warding halo. Knowing the kit of the Warframe is definitely key, and it's knowing how to play that Warframe and how to make it survive the longest. If that means not getting hit, like with invisibility, or even Mesmer skins, technically not getting hit. That's why Nourish isn't the greatest on Revenant. Or, you could even go in the same vein, right? With Necros. He doesn't have damage negation or anything, but he's got his Shield of Shadows, which I don't have built on my Necros. Of course, I don't put Shield of Shadows on anymore. But it takes the damage from Necros, and, not all of it, but it delivers damage to his shadows instead. That means you're popping your Shadow of the Dead more often, but you're also redirecting damage away from Necros. It's not going to make you go to level cap. That's why I don't have Shield of Shadows on Necros, but it is a good. It'll take a lot of damage in the beginning, right? Which once you get through the beginning part of Steel Path, it becomes super easy, and you'll start understanding what helps with what, And then you can run more obscure frames, you know, like let's say Vaughn, right? Doesn't really have anything going for him in the defense department, or it's like Corvex, you know, Corvex, Nidus, Inaros, they're just tanky, you know, as is, but they're not going to survive endgame. And then you got more overguard gating with Frost Prime and Ember Prime, invisibility with Octavia, you know, Protea making you and your entire team shield gated, you know. Protea's 1 is probably the best way to shield gate in the game, in my opinion. You hold it for the shield satellites, and then, you know, base shields per second, 50. That's pretty good. Not to mention you got uh, your regular shield regen added on top of that. So, you know, Protea's really good, and she does decent damage to enemies, you know, help you get through that a little bit better. But yeah, once you get, you know, farther in, you'll be more comfortable with modding and getting your survivability from other ways besides the Warframes themselves to make it easier to play, you know, frames like Oberon, Mirage, Caliban, you know, frames that don't have built-in survivability themselves. Alright, so, got these enemies, Steel Path, right? It's not the greatest, but, I mean, you're not trying to get hit, right? They're shooting at me, taking damage. Boom, shields. Building. You don't have to be at full, but you also don't need to get all the way to full. So we're gonna pause AI here, kill his enemies. Like I said, survivability, once you get it, super easy on all frames. It'll become a cakewalk, and you run frames that, you know, don't have survivability on their own, but will, you know, do damage. And, you know, it's like Geyer stuns enemies, so I shield tank, but I was like, at the same time, hopefully I'm not taking damage because they're stunned, you know. And you're like, oh well, Xmas units, you can't really stun them with abilities. But remember, I've got for my new core, I have the Arcane, which you won't be able to get until you get farther into Steel Path. So, once you get more Arcanes and more mods, right, it's going to become easier. It's just, that first step will be the hardest. But, like I said, there's a lot of frames that make it super easy. Protea, Revenant, you know, Styanax, all of them. Even Loki. Even though everyone says Loki's not a good frame, you know, you can see by usage here, Loki's pretty high up there on the list for frames. These are all, you know, pretty good survivability. Revenant, Rhino, Kalervo, Loki. Kalervo falls off a little bit more during the endgame, but base Steel Path, no problem. You're one-shot with his 1, you're basically one-shotting everything. So you just need to worry about keeping your overguard up, right? No problem. Overguard gate, shield gate, invisibility, invulnerability. Use all the possible combinations you can to make sure you stay alive. It does get easier. That's it for me. Hopefully, this helped you a little bit. and getting into your steel path journey. I hope you get everything you need to make it a cakewalk. Thanks for watching.